All right, next we are going to look at some absolute value functions, and we're going to use our calculator to help us a little bit too, just to help us explore this and talk about a few little properties that will help in future graphs also. So first thing I want you to do is we are going to just, and this problem is not in your notes, just so you know, I want to just be able to have you see what the basic graph for y equals absolute value of x is. And so if you want, you can certainly make a table and plot some points, and we can do this if you want, and we'll just kind of pick some numbers. So if I say that x is -4, then the absolute value of -4 would be +4. If x is 3, the absolute value of 3 is 3. If x is -2, the absolute value of -2 is 2. And I could sit and plot those until I kind of came up with a pattern if I wanted to. Or the easier thing to do would just be to go to your calculator. And so we're going to do that on our calculator. And what I want you to do is you're probably on your main screen right now. And so I want you to go ahead and press the y equals in the upper left-hand corner. And we want to tell our calculator to graph the absolute value of x. You get the absolute value symbol by pressing the math key, which is right below alpha, and then over to number. And then number 1 is the absolute value symbol. You'll notice that that pops out. And I want to graph the absolute value of x. And then I am just going to this first time hit zoom 6 so that it puts it in a nice window for me. Excuse me. And this is what it should look like. And I must have another function in there somewhere that it's graphing that blue line. Oh, maybe not. I'm going to just go ahead and turn my plots off for just a minute. All right, there we go. Okay, so here's the basic function of the absolute value of x. What I want you to notice is that it's V-shaped, that its corner right here is at 0, 0, that it has a slope of 1 on the right side. It goes up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1. And then it goes on the left side. It goes up 1, left 1, up 1, left 1. And that kind of makes sense from its equation because the number in front of this x right here is a 1. When you change that number, it changes the slope, just so you know. Okay, so this basic absolute value of x function just simply goes like this. And so now we're going to explore what happens when we change that equation a little bit, okay? So the next thing we're going to do is check out the absolute value, negative of the absolute value of x, okay? So we'll stick this into our calculator. We'll go back to our y equals. This time we're going to put a negative in front of that, and we're going to see what happens with our graph, okay? So we are going to put a negative in front of here, and we'll do negative, and then math, over to number, absolute value of x, and we'll hit graph again. And this time what you'll notice is it's the same graph, except for it's been flipped over the x-axis. Okay, that graph has just been folded over the x-axis, and that's what happens to it. And that's what this negative does. Okay, so it takes the basic graph and folds it over the x-axis. All right, so instead my graph will look like this. This is an equal sign, so I don't need to do any shading in here because my equation has an equal sign in it. All right, next, this is y is greater than or equal to the absolute value of x. So we already know what the absolute value of x equation looks like, okay? It looks something like this. Again, its peak is at 0, 0, and then it has a slope of +1 on the right side and -1 on the left side, okay? This is not an equal sign now, so I do have to think about whether I'm going to connect this with solid or dotted lines, and then how to shade. Okay, so this inequality symbol is underlined, so I'm going to connect these dots with solid lines. And then I need to shade. So I'm going to pick a point that is not on that line, and I will decide which direction to shade. So I'm going to pick this point right here, which is 0, 1. Okay, so what that means is that x is 0 and y is 1. I'm going to go ahead and plug that into my inequality over here and decide whether it's true or not. is y, which is 1, greater than or equal to the absolute value of 0? And the absolute value of 0 is 0. So is 1 greater than or equal to 0? That's what you have to decide. And yes, 1 is greater than or equal to 0. And so I am going to shade where that point is, and I'm going to shade in here. I want you to notice that it was a greater than symbol, and we shaded above where our lines were. Okay, we shaded above where our lines were. All right, now we're going to kind of play with this, okay? We're going to start with this one on our calculator first so that we can kind of explore. So here I have y equals the absolute value of x and then plus 2. I'm just going to delete this negative over here. And then I have a plus 2. So that plus 2 that's added on to the end is going to affect our graph somehow, and we just have to decide how. Okay, so hopefully you can see that that took the basic absolute value graph and it moved it up 2. That's all that it did. It took the basic graph and it moved it up 2. Okay, so when you add something onto the end, it moves it up. Hopefully you can figure out if you subtract something onto the end that it will move it down, okay? But this one is going to take the basic absolute value graph and move it up 2. So instead of being at 0, 0, it'll be at 0, 2, and then have a slope of 1 or negative 1. Okay, this inequality symbol that's right here is not underlined, so I'm going to connect these with a dotted line. And then it is a greater symbol, so I will shade above, or you can test a spot, so I will test 0, 0, okay? And my question is 0 greater than the absolute value of 0 plus 2? Or is 0 greater than 2? And it's not, so I will not shade where that dot is that I tested. I will shade above it, which hopefully you're figuring out kind of a shortcut. When it's a greater than symbol, you're going to shade above the lines. If it's a less than symbol, you'll shade below. Okay, so this one we're going to try to do without our calculator. This negative right here, we'll flip it over the x. And this negative right here, because it's on the outside of the absolute value symbol, we'll take the graph and move it down 1. Okay, so my graph now will look something like this. It's moved down 1 and it's flipped. Okay, it's an underlined inequality symbol, so I will connect those with a solid line. All right, and I am going to test a spot. I know that it's a less than symbol, so I'm probably going to shade below the lines, but I'm going to test a spot. So again, easy spot to test would be 0, 0 right here. So my question is 0 less than or equal to the negative of the absolute value of 0 minus 1? Well, the absolute value of 0 is 0. Negative in front, negative 0 is still 0. So is 0 less than or equal to negative 1? And it's not. 0 is greater than or equal to negative 1. So I will not shade where that dot is. I will shade opposite of that dot since it's not a true statement. Okay? And lo and behold, I did shade underneath the lines when it was a less than symbol. All right. We have not done a problem like this yet, but we'll go ahead and put this into our calculator. I know that this thing will move the graph up 3 because it's outside of that absolute value symbol. I haven't looked at what this will do yet. So let's peek at this on our calculators. So I will just clear this out, and I want to do the absolute value. So math over to number 1. The absolute value of x minus 1 and then plus 3. And I'll go ahead and graph that. So what we can see is that that peak moved to the right 1. Instead of being at 0, 0, it moved to the right 1 and up 3. We already had the up 3 kind of accounted for. We did not have the right 1 accounted for. Notice that this is a negative symbol in here, and it went to the right. So anything that's inside that absolute value symbol is going to do opposite of what you think. When it's a negative, it's going to go right, and when it's a positive, it's going to go left. Okay? The ones outside the absolute value symbol will do what you think they will. The ones inside will do the opposite. Okay, so I'm going to take that basic function. I moved it right 1 and up 3, and the slope of that still remains the same. Positive 1 on the right side, negative 1 on the left side. Underline inequality symbol, so I will connect with solid lines. And it's a less than symbol, so I'm probably going to shade below the lines. But let's test a spot. So if I test here at 0, 0, is y less than or equal to the absolute value of 0 minus 1 plus 3? Okay, 0 minus 1 is negative 1. The absolute value of negative 1 is 1. So is 0 less than or equal to 4? And it's not, so I will not shade where that dot is. I will shade opposite of that dot. No, sorry, 0 is less than or equal to 4. My mistake. 0 is less than or equal to 4. So I will shade where the dot is, which means I will need to shade everywhere below those lines. Okay, so I would shade that whole region in here. And last, we're going to do this one again without our calculator, because now we can put all of this together. This will flip it over the x-axis. This will move it right 1. No, it won't. It will move it left 1. It's opposite of what you think. Sorry. And this will move it down 2. Okay. All right, so we're going to take our basic graph. We're going to move it left 1. So I'm going to start from 0, 0. I'm going to move it left 1 and down 2 and flip it. So there's my peak, and then I flip it to make it look like that. And you can check this on your calculator if you want. It is not an underlined inequality symbol, so I will connect with a dotted line. And then it's a greater than symbol, so I should probably shade above the lines, but let's test this. Again, I'll put in the point 0, 0. So is 0, the absolute value of 1 is 1, but then I have this negative sign in front, so then I have negative 1 minus 2. So is 0 greater than negative 3? Yes, 0 is greater than negative 3, and I will shade above those lines. Okay? So just to recap this a little bit, A moves the graph left or right. And again, that's opposite of what you think, okay? That number moves the graph right or left. B, which is here, moves the graph up or down. And the negative in front flips it over the x-axis. All right, and that should do it for that lesson.